This is a small community, and a 20-year-old girl was murdered, and that rings deep within that community.
A group of friends take a deadly wrong turn into the driveway of a killer. Less than a year later, he's convicted on all charges.
But it's unfortunately an avoidable situation that he brought upon himself. I mean, there's nothing that she did to deserve what happened to her.
It was a Saturday last April when 20-year-old Kaylin Gillis headed to a house party with a group of friends. It was in the rural upstate New York town of Hebron, about 60 miles north of Albany. That's where Gillis and her friends accidentally turned into the driveway of Kevin Monahan, thinking it was the house they were looking for. When they realized that they were in the wrong place, the group turned the car around to leave, but Monahan was already armed with a 20-gauge shotgun. He fired 2 shots, the first a warning and the second straight into the neck of Gillis. She died just minutes later. Monahan was charged with second-degree murder, reckless endangerment, and tampering with evidence. Months later, Monahan's fate is sealed.
Listen, he's 66, 67 years old. Is he going to get 25 to life? Maybe, but who cares, honestly? If he gets 20 to life, the odds of him ever seeing the outside again are very slim.
Criminal defense attorney Adam Conta says it's not shocking that Monahan was convicted. What's more shocking is that a trial happened at all.
I'm not surprised by the verdict, and neither was the jury because it only took him 2 hours. I'm surprised the case went to trial. That, to me, is an error in judgment.
Monahan pleaded not guilty to all charges, and his defense was simple, that he tripped and the gun accidentally went off. But Conta says that doesn't add up.
This is one of those cases that it smacks you on its face immediately that something wrong happened here, And so then you look one step further at the analysis of, well, was this reckless that this man shot at a car in his driveway twice, or was it an accident? And it boggles my mind now in hindsight that he even went to trial, because it seemed like his defense rested pretty much on a jury believing that he tripped on a nail on his porch, but there was no evidence that that happened. He couldn't even name which nail or show what nail was popping up. So it almost seemed like they were unprepared.
His defense, again, it was all based around this accident. He tripped. There may have been a malfunction. Is that the right way to go about things? I mean, clearly they did not convince the jury about it, didn't convince you. Is there a different angle the defense should have gone with?
Well, at first, I mean, his problem was twofold. His story stinks, but 2, he wasn't honest with the police when they got there. So right from the gate, you have to overcome the burden of covering up what you're saying didn't happen, So he's saying that, oh, there was no shooting at first, and that it was hunters, and I didn't know anything about anything, and I was sleeping through it. And so to a degree, you can later go back and say, listen, I was just so scared in the moment. I was so terrified of what was going to happen to my wife, to myself, You can do that, but the problem is that he didn't show any remorse.
At the time of the shooting, Monahan's wife was also armed inside their home. So if Monahan were to have a convincing accident defense, Conta says his team went about it the wrong way.
You then need to get to the next step of, okay, well, now explain that to a jury. Why would you have done that? And what were you really feeling that made you act that way? And he would have had to show that he was either afraid for his life, which in that circumstance was really, really difficult. I mean, he tried to talk about how there were 2 cars and a motorcycle and they were revving engines. There's just no evidence of that. And even if there is evidence of that, he essentially shot someone in the back. They shot the car while it was turning around to leave. It wasn't approaching the house. It wasn't getting more threatening. And so once you know that you can't take that line of defense really credibly, that a jury won't credibly believe that you were in fear for your life and you had no other option, then was it just an accident? And yeah, he went that way, but it wasn't a good accident story.
Conta says that part of New York does have a strong gun culture, but Monahan had no legs to stand on when it came to using deadly force.
I'm from up there. I'm from upstate New York. I'm from about an hour for where this took place, hour and a half. And there are definitely more gun-loving people up there. There's more of a gun culture up there. I mean, for hunting, for protection and all that. But even still, but in New York, you have a duty to flee. So if you are in a situation where you feel like your life is in danger, your first responsibility under New York law is very different than Texas or Florida. In Texas or Florida, they say, pull out your guns and shoot them. In New York, they say, no, keep your gun in your pocket. And if you got a lane to get out of here, get out of here. And so they would have had to show not only was he standing his ground, but he had no avenue to retreat.
Monahan was convicted on January 23rd, less than 300 days after Gillis's murder. Should they have put up more of a fight, pushed it off a little bit more, kind of gathered more information, come up with a stronger case, would that have been beneficial?
I mean, yes, because it ended terribly. It is the worst case scenario for their clients. So everything they could have done differently, they should have done differently. That's so fast for a murder trial to get from arrest to verdict. That's incredible that it happened that fast. And so, maybe this is a situation where they assessed it in the beginning and they said, listen, let's push this as fast as we can, as hard as we can. Let's get this to trial. I'm about to start a murder trial in the Bronx in a week that is from 2020. These cases don't move fast, and the fact that it's a smaller town, they have less on the docket, but this is such a big case. I mean, did they exhaust every resource to get it out of that community? Because that community is so poisoned with news about the case that could you find a fair jury there? Did they exhaust every resource there? Did they look into every possible avenue that would have avoided a trial?
In the end, the days-long trial wrapped with a quick deliberation, and Conta says it's not likely Monahan could easily appeal.
In order to get over that bar, to have ineffective assistance of counsel, which is essentially like, hey, my lawyer was so bad, I deserve another chance. You have to show that not only were the decisions wrong or bad, but they were done so either recklessly or dishonestly. And almost all decisions that are made by criminal defense attorneys, especially criminal defense attorneys, are sort of fall under the umbrella of strategy. So in order for them to have gotten to this point, in order for them to have gone to trial this fast and put on the defense they had, I think there's probably a paper trail, an email trail, and an intellectual trail that says, hey, we were kind of all on the same page here. So I don't know what the trial was like. I don't know if there were gross missteps on rulings, but this was such a fast verdict that, again, even if you appeal the trial, you have to show that not only did the judge rule incorrectly, not only were you not afforded what legally should have been afforded to you, but that it would have had a material effect on that trial. And so this was such a swift, overwhelming, unanimous verdict that I think it would be really, really difficult to show an appellate judge that there were real issues that rise to that level.
One thing Conta says went right, though, the charges brought against Monahan. We know that there was one person who died, so obviously the murder charge there. And then there was reckless endangerment. But I'm wondering, should there have been attempted murder charges? There were multiple other people who were also in that car.
Yeah, there could have been. That's just a decision by the prosecutor. You could have absolutely had 5 counts of attempted murder on top of the 1 count of murder. But I think, looking at the attempted murder charges, it would be a little bit harder to prove those cases. And I assume the prosecutor didn't want to muddy the jury pool. And if you feel like you have a really strong case for the top charge, which here was murder in the 2nd degree, then just go with that, because the other ones, you don't want to confuse a jury or get them talking about what he's guilty or not guilty of. I think they were really smart in streamlining the indictment to just go after a very convictable count.
It took less than 2 hours of deliberation for jurors to return a sweep of guilty verdicts. Do you think that justice was served in this case?
Yes and no. I think that the jury did the right thing, but do I think this guy deserves 25 to life? I'm not sure. I think there should have been maybe a happy medium found. But that's, again, maybe the prosecutor offered that. Maybe the defense turned it down. I don't know. But, if this ended with a 15 to 20-year sentence, something like that, I think that probably would have been more in line with what my personal view of justice is. But if I had to choose between acquittal or this result, then certainly this is the just result.
After the verdict, Gillis's father posted a statement to his Facebook, writing in part, quote, "We will never have full closure from the events of that fateful day, but do feel justice has prevailed with the guilty on all charges verdict."
Yeah, they did the right thing. They entered a property that was private. They realized it. They turned around and they were leaving. And I mean, this is, it's what's even more tragic is, again, since I'm up there, I know this, these small towns, the reception is not great. It's not like living in a city where you have cell phone service 100% of the time. And they had to go 5, 6 miles or something in order to actually get reliable service. And who knows what life-saving measures could have been done in that time. It's just such a tragedy. It's such an avoidable tragedy. And it is compounded that this man is going to spend the rest of his life in prison, but it's unfortunately an avoidable situation that he brought upon himself.
Conta hopes Monahan's case sets a precedent for the future.
Yeah, maybe this does ring true to New Yorkers, to upstate New Yorkers, to gun owners in New York. That listen, if you go out and you bring a gun and something happens out of your control, then you might pay for that mistake for the rest of your life. So really think seriously before you take it to that step. I hope that's a lesson that is already innate in people, but I don't think it is. And so, I think this is one of those examples where the criminal justice system really may be able to set the tone, I hope, for what can happen if you're reckless with a firearm.
Monahan now faces 25 years to life in prison. He's set to be sentenced on March 1st. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Gillespie.